Okay, sync. So before we start the review, I kind of want to give a quick announcement. And that relates to the fact that the previous two reviews that I've done felt a little too impersonal for me. Sure, I had fun doing them, but I felt like I was developing this sort of film critic persona that pretends to know what good filmmaking is and what works and what doesn't on screen. And I really don't. I feel like I'm just a guy with his subjective opinion about certain films, and hopefully the way I approach them is interesting to someone, but I really don't want to be this critic guy who just rates movies and pretends to know this is a good film or this is a bad one. So I'm going to try and do this review a little more raw, emotionally, I guess. I'm going to not try and edit that much, so yeah, I guess here it goes. And it's as good as time as any to start with Marriage Story, which also I feel, despite being super harshly rehearsed, feels raw and alive. And the best way I could describe the experience of the movie, and I guess this is gonna sound a little pretentious, but I'm gonna try and articulate, is you don't just listen to the dialogue or watch the reactions or follow the plot. It feels like the film flows a little deeper than that. It feels like it flows deeper than you can rationally comprehend it. And you don't just pick it apart thinking, oh, the performances are good, or the script is great in this sense, or oh, maybe this line is awkward, or this character is getting a little annoying. It's just, the pieces are put together so well because of masterful direction that you just completely release control and are guided by the director throughout the storyline, comprehending the situation more not rationally but through your intuition. It's a weirdly mesmerizing and immersive experience. It's like one of those magical times in the cinema when you were a kid and you weren't analyzing the shit out of movies and just trying to feel the emotion. It puts you out there in the room, into the conversations, feeling the tension between the characters, or maybe the coziness between them, the heartfelt love, or sometimes even the dead air in the room. What also helps with the immersion, I think, are the long takes, which some of them I think go for even up to 10 minutes maybe, where Adam Driver or Scarlett Johansson just act their hearts out. The editing in those sequences feels almost seamless, guiding your eyes through the situation naturally, focusing on an object or two to illustrate the character's inner views. But some of the cuts, though, are really jarring, and because they're used so sparingly, every single one of them I think kind of takes a visible beat on the viewer. They're like a punctuation mark or a point of no return, saying, yes, the characters still adore, love, and appreciate each other, but there's a step that has been taken that they can't really come back to. Also, what's really important are the sound editing choices. I mean, Noah Baumbach's editing, sound editing especially, like I've seen it in my Rabbit stories as well, it's just so immaculate, especially in his transitions. Not only is it super comedic, but is also clever because it kind of illustrates the conflict that happens in the silence between the cuts.
You get a lawyer too.
Well, I guess I better be going. Stewart rose from the ditch, climbed into his car, and started up the road that led toward the north.
Okay, so I've mentioned about this before, but what really makes the film, I think, are the emphasis on the details. And the way the movie captures these character-defining quirks of every person on screen is something to be really admired. Not only does it show every character's vulnerabilities, but these little actions, they kind of speak of what every character is all about. And I think what it comes down to is Noah Baumbach, the director, who has a really good eye in observing these characters in their everyday boring situations and picking apart the specific details or quirks that actually make the character. And yes, there's a lot of talking in the film, but the characters also move around. They gesture and emote, they use their mannerisms, and through these actions they show what the difference between, or the conflict between what they're thinking and what they're actually saying, or what their actual hidden motivations are. And biggest compliments here come to Laura Dern, who not only has so much fun with her character, but her charisma feels really infectious, and you just can't help but watch her every time she's on screen.
And she's perfect.
The way these character details are reincorporated into the story, it's never in your face. It doesn't scream, oh, remember this? Or have you seen this before? Now it's coming back, so you know what that means? It's a lot of more of like a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing, you know? And because of this beautiful restraint and consistency, the direction feels really great. And you kind of want to tap the director on the shoulder and say, you know, you did not have to do this, but you did, and just lovely. And these little things, they really add up, because the effort for continuity here it makes the film feel really truthful and honest. You know, there's this scene where a character gets a scab on his finger and he starts bleeding a little bit, and then suddenly a couple of scenes later, he picks up this little parking ticket, and on it there's like these little droplets of blood, which, I don't know, it's so simple, but it just takes you right into the story, feeling so realistic. And all these little details speak in tandem, I think. The characters' clothes show their transition, like Scarlett Johansson starting off with a little muted clothes because of her kind of overly controlled husband being in charge, and then suddenly developing new colors and more vivid color palettes as she gets a little more freed up. Or the contrast between the character's physical appearance, with Adam Driver in his military towering physique standing over Scarlett Johansson and showing his dominating personality in frame. Really, not a minute even feels wasted in this film, because even when the characters are telling bedtime stories to the child, they also reflect the characters' different views and conflicting views, maybe even their obliviousness to their faults. Scarlett Johansson, Adam Driver, they just kind of capture lighting in a bottle, really. I mean, it's almost strange to see Scarlett so warm and comforting. She really disappears in the character and refuses to expressively show her sexuality in frame or show it to market the movie.
I love you.
Every little reaction in the film feels really well rehearsed and planned out, but at the same time also natural and realistic. You know, it's captivating to watch the acting subtlety on screen when a little smile turns to hurtfulness and then is quickly hidden away before the other character sees it. You know, there's a beautiful play on setup and reincorporation in the film, which leads to greater perceptiveness and empathy from the audience, and even results in increased rewatchability as you start noticing a little more details of like, oh, I know where this reaction stems from. The film talks and narrates a lot about the characters in the first half, sure, but then the focus is completely shifted, I think, and the next part of the film focuses a lot more on visual storytelling, showing what the real-life implications of these characters or characteristics are. And sometimes, you know, it feels like a really interesting scene-level experiment on the Kuleshov effect as you start interpreting more and more about the characters from what's been said about them. The way this film balances laughs and heartbreak is just a pure joy to watch, really. Sure, there's uninvolved snickers at how childish some of the arguments between the couple are, but then suddenly empathy just takes over, feeling deep care for the flawed characters. The best way I could describe the film's mood is it's awkwardly but lovably human. Baumbach is great at showing how unfulfilling most situations and how comical most moments in life are. Memories and films definitely color some experiences and make them idyllic, while in reality what we mostly experience is something vulnerably embarrassing but really no less lovable. And I feel like this is what the film manages to capture really, really well. There are also a couple of small visual gags and comedically timed reactions, which is another great compliment to the editor. I'm sure there's going to be comparisons here, because the film does in a sense follow the Woody Allen formula or tradition of romantic stories with an intellectual and more mature and bittersweet tone, but here everything seems so unpretentious. The characters feel a lot more natural and charming without the suffocating pseudo-intellectual self-defecating spice of Allen's persona. Okay, so I guess we kind of need to talk a little about the flaws of the film, and okay, the biggest one for me especially is there's some in-your-face American comedy humor that is just, it's hard to digest, you know? The mother character on the older actor character is, It looked to me like a forgotten and disoriented remnant of the cheesy comedic sidekick cliché. You know, they're never as bad as, this, but they, well, you know what? They actually kind of reminded me the Hugh Grant's housemate in Notting Hill, who's a little annoying, but has some moments, I guess. Despite the fact that I would prefer them to be a little toned down, it did not really ruin the movie for me, and it kind of worked in the end. In the end, it's just a really positive and bright movie with outstanding performances and immaculate direction. It just leaves audience with eagerness to reflect and be a lot more appreciative and affectionate for others. And sometimes it feels like we need that more than anything else.